Здравствуйте, дорогие ребята! Дистанционная образовательная программа «Обо всем на английском» Центра «Радость» – это замечательная возможность совместить приятное с полезным, послушать прекрасные музыкальные произведения, отправиться в путешествие по страницам истории отечественной и мировой культуры и одновременно попрактиковаться в восприятии английской речи. Хорошо, если в ходе занятий вы будете повторять как знакомые, так и новые для вас английские слова, фразы и выражения. Занятия скомпонованы так, что для этого у вас будут все возможности. Премьеры видеозанятий будут проходить по воскресеньям раз в 2 недели, но смотреть их можно в любое удобное время. Главное, не забывайте каждый раз регистрироваться в анкетах Яндекс.Формы, ссылки на которые найдете в описании каждого ролика. Занятия программы «Обо всем на английском» разделены на циклы. По итогам каждого цикла вам будет предложено потренироваться в прохождении тестирования, проверить знания новых английских слов, терминов, выражений, ответить на вопросы на английском языке. Тестирование можно проходить трижды для достижения наилучшего результата. Пройдя тесты всех модулей программы, в конце учебного года вы получите итоговый сертификат Judge of Art, что значит ценитель, знаток искусства. Итак, дорогие друзья, настройтесь на восприятие английской лексики и приготовьтесь к нашему новому увлекательному путешествию.
Palace.
Moorish.
Islamic.
Fortress.
Desert.
Architecture.
Courtyard.
Fountain. Arch. Hedge. Canal. Fragrance.
Hello, dear friends! I'm sure you love traveling. Traveling helps you discover how beautiful and diverse our world is. How many languages, countries, and amazing natural landscapes there are on our Earth. Our ancestors also traveled many centuries ago. They discovered new lands and wanted to learn more about the world they lived in, its possibilities and mysteries. In those days, traveling was a much more dangerous adventure than it is today. These days, you can travel by train or plane and take a short rest in a comfortable hotel at any time. But in those days, any journey involved many risks. They traveled hundreds of kilometers on foot along unknown roads, through forests, steppes, rivers, high mountains, and hot deserts. Sometimes they had to spend the night under the open sky with dangerous wild animals. Just imagine that you are in a host country. The locals speak foreign language and no one knows how they treat strangers. Every journey was unpredictable, full of surprises. The danger of the desert without water and far away from home was a real challenge. In the world of forests, steppes and deserts, the man was fascinated by the image of a garden where the person was happy, peaceful, and relaxed. Therefore, since ancient times, the garden has become a symbol of peace and joy, the ideal place where man can be really happy. In the Bible, the most famous book, we can read that the first people, Adam and Eve, also first lived in the Garden of Eden, the beautiful garden. Since ancient times, people learned to farm the land and began to grow gardens. They planted fruit trees and bushes near water springs and decorated them with flowers. Let us remember another great example. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
In the Kingdom of Babylon around the year 600 BC, an outstanding work of architecture could be found, which would be known as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Its edification was motivated by the love of King Nebuchadnezzar II for the princess Amytis of Media. The Babylonian king had unified the kingdoms of Babylon and Media, and after achieving his conquests, he returned home with Princess Amytis as his wife. Some accounts affirm that Amytis missed the mountains of Media, which were covered by the most beautiful plants. But Babylon was a great plain, and its horizon was rather dull. Noticing his queen's dismayed nostalgia, the Babylonian king ordered the construction of an outstanding work of engineering. The great building then started, and a great pyramid of steps was edified, in which terraces were supported by beautiful columns. These terraces had an endless array of plants from everywhere. The garden was full of fruit trees and flowers of all colors. That construction was a source of amazement for all those who visited the capital of the Babylonian Empire. And Princess Amytis, while contemplating such a marvelous garden, built by her husband, could feel her native land once more. Such a luxurious effort was only possible due to the economic power of the Kingdom of Babylon, which was the wealthiest nation of its era.
At our meetings, we will get to know the wonderful gardens around the world, which history goes back centuries and countries to the present day. We will see their typical features and the architectural, engineering, and art solutions that have made them immortal monuments of the world culture. The Alhambra is a complex of ancient palaces and gardens in the south of Spain, attracting millions of travelers from all over the world. If you want to see the legendary Alhambra, you should go to the modern city of Granada in the south of Spain. The famous Strait of Gibraltar, which lies between Europe and Africa, is not far from here. It's important to know that the Alhambra gardens and palaces were built by Arab tribes from North Africa, who had conquered Spain and had ruled it for more than 700 years from the 8th century. In Europe, they became known as the Moors and their culture as Moorish. North Africa, where the Arabs came from, is an amazing region. Now, it is the territory of Algeria, Libya, Egypt, and Morocco. The largest part of these territories is occupied by the world's most famous desert, the Sahara Desert. It is several thousand kilometers of hot sand from Mauritania to Egypt, from West Africa to the Nile, where the ancient Egyptian civilization was founded 6,000 years ago. The Arabs came from the north of Africa to the Iberian Peninsula, the territory of modern Spain, in the 7th and 8th centuries. They defeated the kingdom of the Visigoths, which was the part of the powerful Roman Empire, and established the Caliphate, an Islamic state. In the 13th century, a Moorish fortress, the Alhambra, was built on the territory of the Granada Emirate. Translated from Arabic, the name Alhambra sounds like Red Castle. This complex, which was built on the hilltops in the south of Spain by the Arabs who came from Africa, is still considered to be a garden of paradise in the middle of the desert. The Moorish garden came from an enchanted African oasis. Although the surrounding area is green, we should not forget that the Sahara Desert begins just 300 kilometers away. Camel caravans and the traces of old civilizations and peoples can be seen there. Ancient Egypt, the first Christians who came to these places 2,000 years ago, the Islamic conquerors, the Berber natives of North Africa. From the outside, the palace fortress looks like a military bastion. However, one has only to look inside and see the beautiful palaces and gardens, and you will immediately find yourself in a wonderful Arabian fairy tale. A special feature of the Alhambra is that it was built according to the principle of Muslim hidden architecture. It is impossible to evaluate the castle from the outside, since all the most beautiful things are hidden inside and open only to residents and guests. In addition to the beautiful architecture, the Alhambra has amazing gardens. Some of them are part of one or another palace, but there are some separate gardens. For example, a larve. Located along the fortress walls, they amaze us with their greenery and splendor. That is why they are often called the forest or the Alhambra. The picturesque gardens of the architectural and palace complex are well combined with courtyards, graceful arches, pattern-carved windows, fountains, and other decorative elements. The Moorish style is based on the ancient Arabian gardens, but in a more elegant form. The main architectural difference is in the shape of the arcades. The Arabs have a pointed arch, while the Moors have an arch in the form of a horseshoe. In the 13th century, Muhammad I of Granada, king of the great Nasrid dynasty, came to the Alhambra and settled there. It was the beginning of the Alhambra's most successful period. One of the main aims of the local architects was to decorate every corner and every area, no matter the size. As a result, most of the interior arches are false arches, which are used only for decoration. The walls were decorated very richly with ceramics, plaster, and fine wooden carvings. Although Islam bans the image of figures in art, the Alhambra's decoration is very diverse. Calligraphy is a key element in Islamic architecture. Poems are written directly on the plaster in calligraphic patterns. One of the most impressive decorative elements used in the Alhambra is the Arch of Macarobbas, made up of small cells like the honeycomb. This version of the arch was popular in Islam in the 12th century. Examples can be found in the Hall of the Two Sisters and Hall of the Abencerrages. Since the Catholic monarchs conquered Granada, there had been many restorations. Nevertheless, the Alhambra has always had the image of a Muslim palace. The garden surrounds the temple, and it is the best part of the palace. The garden is the image of paradise in heaven and on earth. Today, we will try to look at the Alhambra's most remarkable gardens. Well, there is the Court of Myrtles. The first impression when you get here is the atmosphere of harmony and simplicity. The name of the place comes from the myrtle bushes that surround the pond. Their bright green color contrasts with the white marble of the courtyard. The myrtle leaves are evergreen. During the rainy season, they smell sweet. It should be mentioned that the plants in Moorish gardens were not trimmed and lined up in rows. It is the tradition of all Oriental peoples. However, under the influence of European gardening customs, we can find trimmed hedges in the Moorish garden, and we can even see the trimmed myrtle hedges in this courtyard now. The Court of Lions is probably the most famous place in the Alhambra. It is called so because of the 12 lions that are part of the fountain in the center of it. According to the legend, 12 lions supported the throne of Solomon, the famous king of Israel. It is said that Vizier advised Sultan Muhammad to decorate this palace in the same way. However, during the restoration process, it was discovered that the lions had appeared there in the 14th or even the 16th century after the Spanish kings had conquered Granada. The lions themselves have a large bowl of a 12-cornered shape, and this white marble fountain is one of the brightest examples of Muslim architecture. In Muslim beliefs, water has a special value. In a Moorish garden, water should be visible from anywhere, and no matter what shape or size, it should be clean and clear. The Moorish gardens have a regular geometric shape. The garden is a rectangular area enclosed by walls that keeps it safe. Inside, irrigation canals are built in the shape of a cross, and areas are planted with trees. The Court of Lions, like the other Alhambra courtyards, has a rectangular form. It has canals of white marble that go from inside the pavilion and pass under the pergolas before crossing into the central fountain. There are fountains on the edges of the canals, water from which fills the central fountain. The canals of the garden are not only beautiful, they symbolize the 4 rivers of heaven. The Moorish garden is divided into 4 even sections, 4 gardens. This is called charbagh in Arabic. The charbagh is the idea of 4 gardens divided by canals of water and is the basis of all Arabian gardens. The Daraksa, or Garden of the Orange Trees, dates back to the 16th century, but it was built on the former Arabian garden. In the magical gardens of the East, decorative plants are always grow closely with the fruit trees and bushes. Figs, and pomegranates have become traditional symbols of the Moorish garden. They are usually planted at the entrance and around the ground. No Oriental garden can exist without lemon and orange trees. Like palm trees, they are planted in decorative boxes so that they can be moved to a greenhouse when the weather gets cold. In the Daraksa garden, there are cypresses, acacias, orange trees, and box bushes with the big marble fountain in the center. The border of the fountain is decorated with the Arabic poem carved in stone. A palm tree stands in the middle of Rusafan. Born in the west, far from the land of palms, I said to it, "How like me you are, far away and in exile. In long separation from family and friends, you have sprung from soil in which you are a stranger, and I, like you, am far away from home." The thoughtful images in this poem by the medieval Arab poet Abd al-Rahman match the atmosphere of the Alhambra perfectly. Poetry and architecture go hand in hand in the Islamic world. Traditionally, in the Moorish garden, the outer courtyards surrounding the house were not very luxurious. Each had a fountain in the middle and was usually planted with fruit trees. This part of the garden was not visible, but it was used for growing fruit. The closer to the main palace buildings, the richer the decorations became. Simple slabs were replaced by marble ones, common plants by decorative ones. The best and the most expensive ones were in the inner gardens. There are myrtle bushes, orange trees, cypresses, and rose bushes. Roses are the most important flowers in the Moorish gardens. A real, carefully planned and well-kept rose garden is one of the essential parts of Oriental style. The roses are selected not only by color and size of the buds, but also by the intensity and flavor of the fragrance. There should also be an area in the garden for spicy herbs: melissa, mint, tarragon, sage, and lavender produce wonderful fragrance. An example of such a garden is the General Life Cypress Courtyard, the country residence of the Emirs of Granada, which forms an ensemble with the Alhambra. The central pond here is surrounded by a myrtle hedge. In the middle of the pond, there is a small stone fountain. The courtyard is called so because of the old cypress trees that grow on the verandas. This garden is an image of a hanging garden with myrtle bushes, boxes of flowers, and very old cypress trees. One of the staircases here, the water staircase, is very beautiful and original. It is believed to have been built by the Arabs. The staircase is divided into 3 spans. Each one has fountains and handrails with canals of running water. The laurels planted around are joined together by their tops to form a green tunnel. It is extremely beautiful when the sun shines through it. Much of Moorish art was borrowed by European culture. This can be seen well in Christian monasteries in Europe. In the Middle Ages, monastic gardens were already based on the square or rectangular Persian gardens of paradise. The Alhambra and General Life Palace complexes in Granada were a model for European architects. The Alhambra's Moorish and Arab cultures attracted not only travelers and architects from all over the world. They were also a source of inspiration for composers, poets, artists, and writers. The Gate of the Alhambra is one of the piano preludes by Claude Debussy, French composer of the 19th century. Let's imagine that we are standing at the entrance to this enchanting Moorish fortress, together with the composer for the first time. And here is the Memories of the Alhambra by the Spanish composer Francisco Tárrega, written in 1899. Our first trip to wonderful gardens of the world is coming to an end. The incredible beauty of the Moorish Alhambra will not leave anyone indifferent. The gardens are like ancient oases. They are a refuge for travelers. They keep calm, cool, quiet sounds of running water and fragrance of extraordinary plants and flowers.